All right, so get this. Today we're diving into something called remote reading. You know how sometimes you wish you could just jump back in time and
Right.
see historical events firsthand?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what this is all about. We've got a lecture here by this guy, E.J. Gold,
Okay.
who claims he actually used remote reading
Ah.
for, wait for it, intelligence operations.
Oh, wow.
I'm already hooked, and I bet you are too.
It's definitely intriguing. What's fascinating is that remote reading, according to Gold, isn't about actually sending your consciousness across time and space, like astral projection. Think of it more like focusing a really powerful telescope on a specific point in time.
Okay, that's a helpful image. But how does that even work? Gold talks about using relics as time bridges, almost like there's some kind of magic key to unlock the past. You're telling me I could potentially hold an ancient Roman coin and suddenly see what life was like back then.
That's the basic idea. Gold believes that time is the bridge, and these relics act as a sort of tuning fork, vibrating with the energy of their origin point.
So it's not like I'm physically traveling back in time.
Yeah.
More like I'm tuning into a specific frequency, like a radio.
Exactly. Gold describes time and space as being interwoven, like the threads of a fabric. Every point in time is connected through what he calls a grid system. It's a really complex model of the universe. But the takeaway is that all moments in time are, in a way, accessible.
Okay. My brain is already doing backflips. But I'm with you so far. But let's get real here. Is there anything to suggest that this isn't just, a bunch of new age mumbo jumbo?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Gold claims he used remote reading for intelligence work, gathering information about events and locations without actually being there physically. Now, whether that's true or not, we can't say for sure. But the idea itself is fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like something straight out of a spy movie, but with a psychic twist.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I want to try this remote reading thing. Where do I even start? Do I need to go find myself a dusty old relic in some antique shop?
That might be a good place to start. Gold emphasizes the importance of using relics as a focal point, objects that originate from the time period you want to access. He says they act as a sort of energetic link.
So if I wanted to, say, get a glimpse of what life was like in ancient Egypt, I might try focusing on an Egyptian amulet.
Exactly, but it's not just about staring at an object. Gold talks about the importance of getting out of phase with the normal world. He's a bit vague on the details, but it seems to involve shifting your awareness onto this interconnected grid of time and space.
Okay, out of phase sounds a bit, well, out there. Could you break that down a bit more? What's actually happening in my mind when I'm doing this?
Think of it like this. Imagine our everyday reality is like a radio, playing a specific station. To access a different reality, a different point in time, you need to adjust the dial to a different frequency.
So in remote reading, I'm essentially tuning my awareness to the frequency of the time period I want to access.
That's a great way to put it.
But how do you actually tune in? Gold uses these terms, like slipstream movement
Yes.
and contact jaunting. It all sounds a bit like science fiction to me.
I know, right? He definitely has a flair for the dramatic.
Yeah.
But if we strip away the jargon, what he's describing is a process of focused attention. Using the relic as a guide to shift your awareness onto the grid, slipstream movement seems to be about focusing your attention on the target time period. And contact jaunting is the moment you actually connect with that time and space.
Hold on. So am I actually seeing something in my mind's eye? Or is it more of a feeling, an intuition?
That's a great question. Gold describes it as a form of remote viewing, but he acknowledges that the experience can vary depending on the individual. Some people might see vivid images, others might feel strong emotions or get a sense of knowing. It's all about tapping into those subtle perceptions beyond our five senses.
There's no guarantee that I'll have a full-blown technicolor vision of the past. It might be more subtle, more nuanced than that.
Exactly. And Gold emphasizes the importance of approaching this with an open mind, like an explorer venturing into uncharted territory. You don't know what you'll find until you start looking.
That's both exciting and a little daunting. But I have to ask, what's the point of all this? Why would I even want to try remote reading in the first place?
Yeah.
Is it just a fun way to pass the time? Or is there something more to it?
Well, Gold suggests that remote reading can be used for a lot more than just peeking into the past. He claims it can help us understand and even deactivate negative influences from our past lives.
Wait, past lives. Now we're really getting into the deep end. You're telling me that I could potentially understand my fear of spiders by remotely viewing a past life where I was, I don't know, bitten by a giant prehistoric spider.
That's the idea. Gold believes that we carry energetic imprints from past lives, experiences that can influence our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in the present.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. So it's not just about satisfying our curiosity about the past. It's about using remote reading as a tool for self-discovery and personal growth.
Precisely. Gold believes that by bringing these past experiences to conscious awareness, we can begin to disentangle ourselves from their negative influence and create positive change in our lives.
That's a pretty powerful claim. But I have to admit, the skeptic in me is still wondering, is there any evidence to support any of this?
That's a valid question, and it's one we'll unpack in more detail. Gold himself claims to have used remote reading for intelligence work, and there have been some anecdotal accounts from others claiming to have had success with the technique. However, scientific research on remote viewing is limited and often controversial.
So we're venturing into the realm of the unknown, the untested, the potentially unexplainable. But even if we approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism, there's something undeniably intriguing about the idea of tapping into the vast reservoir of time and gaining insights from the past.
What stands out to you so far? Does any particular aspect of Gold's claims resonate with you, or maybe trigger some healthy skepticism?
Well, the idea that we could tap into past lives to understand ourselves better is certainly compelling. And the concept of time as this multi-dimensional grid that we can navigate is fascinating. But I'm also wondering, how does one actually do this? What are the practical steps involved in remote reading?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll explore in more detail next. Gold actually outlines a step-by-step process for conducting a remote reading session, and it involves more than just staring at an old Roman coin. So you've got your relic, something that speaks to you from that time period you're interested in. Now, you need to use it to shift your awareness.
Okay, but how exactly do you do that? I mean, I could hold an old Egyptian amulet all day long, but I'm not suddenly going to be transported back to the time of the pharaohs. Am I?
Not physically, no, but that's where the out-of-phase concept comes in. Gold talks about it as a kind of mental shift, a way of disengaging from your normal, everyday awareness and tuning into a different frequency.
Okay, I'm still a bit fuzzy on that. Do you have an example that might help me wrap my head around this?
Sure. Think about it like meditation. When you meditate, you're quieting your mind, shifting your focus away from the constant chatter of thoughts and external distractions, in a way. You're putting yourself out of phase with your normal waking state.
So with remote reading, it's like I'm using the relic as a focal point for meditation, a way to shift my awareness
to a different state of consciousness.
Exactly. And once you're in that state, Gold says you can start to tap into this interconnected grid of time and space. He calls this next step slipstream movement, which basically means focusing your attention on the target time period, using the relic as a guide.
So I'm holding my relic. I'm in a meditative state, and I'm focusing my attention on, let's say, ancient Greece. What happens next? Do I suddenly see images popping into my head?
Not necessarily. Gold emphasizes that. It's not like watching a movie. It's more subtle than that. You might get flashes of images, impressions, feelings, even just a sense of knowing. Okay, so I need to be patient, not expect a Hollywood-style production in my mind. But let's say I do start to get some impressions, some insights. How do I know if they're real or just my imagination running wild?
That's a great question, and it's one that even seasoned remote viewers grapple with. Gold suggests keeping a detailed log of your experiences, noting down any images, feelings, or insights that come up over time. You might start to see patterns emerge, connections that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
So it's about paying attention to those subtle cues, those whispers from the past, and then trying to make sense of them.
Exactly. And Gold believes that the act of paying attention, of actively engaging with these impressions, can actually help to strengthen your connection to the grid.
So the more I practice, the better I might become at tuning in and receiving information. It's like learning any skill. Practice makes perfect.
That's the idea. And Gold suggests that anyone can learn to do this with enough practice and guidance.
Now, earlier you mentioned that Gold claims remote reading can be used to deactivate negative influences from past lives. That's a pretty bold claim. How does that work?
It's not entirely clear, and Gold doesn't go into great detail, but he seems to be suggesting that by bringing these past experiences to conscious awareness, we can start to release their energetic hold on us.
So it's not like I'm going back in time and changing the past. It's more about changing how I relate to those past experiences in the present.
Exactly. It's about gaining a new perspective on those events. understanding how they might be influencing your present-day thoughts and behaviors.
Okay, that makes sense. But I have to ask, even if I can access these past lives, how do I know which ones are relevant to my current challenges? I mean, I could have lived hundreds of past lives. It would take forever to sift through all of them.
That's true, and that's where the relics come in again. Gold suggests using muscle testing or other intuitive techniques to determine which relics resonate most strongly with you. He believes that these relics can act as a sort of energetic compass, pointing you toward the past lives that are most relevant to your present situation.
So, if I'm working through a fear of public speaking, for example,
Hmm.
I might try holding different relics and seeing which ones evoke the strongest response, the strongest feeling of connection.
Exactly. And the relic that creates the strongest resonance might be linked to a past life, where you experience something traumatic related to public speaking. By remotely viewing that past life, you might gain insights into the root cause of your current fear.
Okay, that's fascinating. So it's not just about randomly picking a time period to explore. It's about using the relics and your own intuition to guide you to the experiences that are most relevant to your present-day life.
Exactly. And gold emphasizes the importance of setting a clear intention. For your remote reading session, what are you hoping to gain from this experience? What insights are you seeking?
So it's not just about passively observing the past. It's about actively engaging with it,
Yeah.
seeking understanding, and ultimately using that knowledge to create positive change in the present.
Precisely. And even if you approach remote reading with a healthy dose of skepticism, there's something undeniably intriguing about the idea of tapping into the vast reservoir of time and gaining insights from the past.
It certainly challenges our conventional notions of time and reality, and it opens up the possibility that we're not just limited to the experiences of this one lifetime. We might be carrying a whole tapestry of experiences, of memories, of wisdom from countless past lives.
Exactly. And if gold is to be believed, we have the potential to access those experiences, to learn from them,
What?
and to use them to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life in the present.
Okay, so we talked about using relics to connect with past lives, but gold also mentions the possibility of using remote reading to glimpse into the future. Now, I'm not asking you to predict winning lottery numbers, but how would that even work?
Well, gold is a bit vague on the specifics, but he seems to be suggesting that we can use remote reading to sense the energetic patterns or probabilities that exist in the future. It's not about predicting specific events with certainty, but more about gaining insights into potential trends or outcomes.
So it's less like reading a crystal ball
Yeah.
and more like looking at a weather forecast, getting a sense of the general direction things might be heading in.
That's a good way to put it. And gold emphasizes that the future is not fixed or predetermined. Our choices and actions in the present can influence the course of events.
So even if we can get a glimpse into the future, it's not a guarantee. We still have the power to shape our own destiny.
Exactly. But the idea that we might be able to sense potential outcomes, to get a heads up on what might be coming our way, is both fascinating and a little unnerving, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, but it also highlights the interconnectedness of time. The idea that past, present, and future are not separate compartments, but rather interwoven threads in the tapestry of existence.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it speaks to the potential of remote reading to expand our understanding of ourselves and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Now, I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, this all sounds fascinating, but what's the practical application? Can I use remote reading to get ahead in my career, find my soulmate, win the lottery?
Well, Gold doesn't go into specific applications like that, but he does suggest that remote reading can be used in a variety of fields, from personal growth to historical research to even, as he claims, intelligence gathering.
So the possibilities are pretty much limitless, depending on your intention and what you're hoping to achieve.
Exactly. And as with any tool, it all comes down to how you use it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the mechanics of remote reading, the potential benefits, and even the possibility of glimpsing into the future. But I have to ask, if this is something that anyone can learn, why isn't everyone doing it? Why isn't this a mainstream practice?
Well, that's a great question. And there are probably a few reasons why remote reading hasn't gained wider acceptance. For one, it's a pretty radical concept. It challenges our conventional understanding of time, space, and consciousness.
It definitely requires a willingness to step outside of the box, to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. And for some people, that might be a step too far. They might be uncomfortable with the idea of tapping into these unseen realms, Or they might simply be skeptical that it's even possible.
I can understand that. It's a big leap of faith, especially when there's limited scientific evidence to back it up.
That's true. And even for those who are open to the idea, developing these skills takes time, patience, and dedication. It's not something you can master overnight.
So it's not like watching a YouTube tutorial and suddenly becoming a master time traveler. It's more like learning any complex skill. Dedication, practice, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. And even if you approach remote reading with a healthy dose of skepticism, there's something undeniably fascinating about exploring the possibilities of human consciousness. Who knows what hidden potentials we might unlock if we dare to venture beyond the boundaries of our ordinary perception.
Well said. Now, I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering, okay, I'm intrigued, but where do I go from here? How can I learn more about this? And maybe even try it for myself.
Well, that's where we'll pick up in our next segment. We'll dive into some of the resources and techniques that you can use to start exploring the fascinating world of remote reading.
All right, so for those of you who are ready to take the plunge and explore this whole remote reading thing, where do we even begin? I'm picturing myself surrounded by, old maps, dusty books,
Yeah.
and maybe a crystal ball for good measure.
Well, you might want to hold off on the crystal ball, but the good news is you don't need a whole Indiana Jones setup to get started. Gold suggests that the best way to learn is through guided practice. He recommends finding a qualified coach or teacher who can help you develop these skills.
So basically, don't try this at home alone. Find a mentor, someone who's been there and done that.
Exactly. There are workshops and courses available, both online and in person, where you can learn the techniques and practice with others. It's always helpful to have guidance and support, especially when you're dealing with something as, mind-bending as remote reading.
That makes sense. But what if someone's feeling adventurous and wants to try experimenting on their own? Any tips for the DIY crowd?
Sure. Start by exploring your own intuition. Gold emphasizes the importance of developing your sensitivity to energy and information. You can do this through meditation, journaling, even just paying attention to your dreams. The key is to become more aware of those subtle cues and impressions that often go unnoticed.
So it's about honing those intuitive skills, that inner knowing that we all have but often ignore.
Exactly. And once you start paying attention, you might be surprised at what you discover. Gold even suggests that seemingly random or insignificant locations can hold unexpected connections to our past lives. He mentions oddball places like Iceland, Greenland, even Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm having a hard time picturing myself hanging out with penguins in a past life.
Well, Gold has this theory that Antarctica wasn't always a frozen wasteland. He suggests it was once a lush, green continent teeming with life. Maybe some of us have ancient connections to that lost world, memories buried beneath the ice.
Wow, that's an image that really sparks the imagination. And it speaks to the vast scope of time, the idea that we might have lived countless lives in all sorts of unexpected places and times.
Exactly. And Gold believes that those experiences, those memories, are still accessible to us if we know how to tune in. He even tells this funny story about tourists missing the signing of the Magna Carta by just half an hour.
Okay, I have to hear this. What happened? Did they get stuck in traffic?
Well, Gold doesn't go into the details, but the point he's making is that if remote reading is truly possible, then the concept of linear time becomes much more fluid.
So it's not just about traveling back in time. It's about understanding that all of time, past, present, and future, might be interconnected and accessible in ways we're only beginning to grasp.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the fundamental question we posed earlier. If you could remotely view any point in time or space, where would you go? What mysteries would you want to unravel?
That's a question worth pondering. And it's one that each of us needs to answer for ourselves. But I think the real magic of remote reading lies in the journey itself, in the process of exploring these hidden realms and discovering those unexpected connections that weave together the tapestry of our existence.
I couldn't agree more. And even if we don't achieve perfect clarity or verifiable results, the very act of engaging with these concepts can expand our perspective and challenge our assumptions about the nature of reality.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we've only scratched the surface of this enigmatic and potentially transformative practice. But for those of you who are ready to embark on your own explorations of time and consciousness, remember to approach it with curiosity, respect, and a sense of adventure. Who knows what wonders await us in the unexplored realms of time and consciousness? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep your minds open and your curiosity ignited.